It became this thing of, trying to figure out, well, him developing his own story out of what I had said, and then me going with the story that I had. So that's cool. You guys, I just started the camera to recording. Although I've been on Ustream for a few minutes, I just started 10 minutes into the broadcast saying record. So if you're watching this later on, welcome. Sorry you missed that other part, but it's whatever you get see is what you're exactly supposed to see. So here it is. Um, hey, so here it is. It's funny. Um, when I started thinking about this later on, I started thinking about all the symbolism. There was a part when I was doing the talk, or when I was preparing to go in to do the talk, and I was reading up a little bit about Joseph Campbell because I always like to introduce ideas and who it is that presented the idea. So if I'm talking about Carl Jung, I'd want to say a little bit about Carl Jung, but at the time I was talking about Joseph Campbell. And so for those that didn't know anything about Joseph Campbell, I wanted to, give a little background details on who he was, and what he taught and where he taught, all those things. So on this particular day, I was reading this thing about Joseph Campbell, and one of the quotes that he was attributed to making was is that a myth, which is what he did. He talked about myth. He was a mythologist, and so he taught mythology at whatever school it was. I forget already. And so he talked about myth, and he said a myth is a mask for God. A myth is a mask for God. And I kind of, went into this meditative thing, and I started thinking about a myth as a mask for God. You know, when we talk about metaphors, metaphors are replacing an idea or something, replacing something that we're trying to share with something else to give you more of a meaning. So one of the examples we use is I'm always saying that somebody is nutty. You're a nut. And a nut, they're not literally a nut. A nut serves as a metaphor. And so metaphorically speaking, a person is a nut. So we replace certain things with certain ideologies or certain things. And so he used this idea, a myth is a mask for God. And myths are stories, as you know, stories that give us some type of information as to what it is that we want to share. So we would hear Jesus sharing all kind of parables, stories, myths, if you will, to explain certain ideas that may be complex if we just try to explain them straight out. So, if I'm trying to share with you a certain idea, a particular idea, I might want to tell you a story. So, to that end, let me tell you this story, and then I'll come back to this a myth as a face for God and talk about a little bit about the chapter that I want to, or the section that I want to in A Course in Miracles. So I called a girlfriend of mine. We finally hooked up on the phone, and we're talking about, a lot of different things. We hadn't talked in a few days, and I knew that it was probably something going on in her life. When she doesn't talk to me, it's usually because she's stressed out about something. Any other time, she's, all lighthearted in a conversation with me, and it's great. But when she avoids me, I know something is going on. And I try not to press her about it because I know too that kind of stresses her out when I press her about, like, okay, why are you shutting down? Why aren't you talking? What's going on? It stresses her out. So I try not to do it. Anyway, so I finally get on this conversation with her today, and she starts telling me about um, how she had broken out in hives. She's been under a lot of stress. She's lost both her parents, and a lot of things going on in her life. And so she said she broke out in hives the other day. She hasn't been able to sleep. Her ulcers, she had those really bad, and sometimes those flare up. And so she was having all these problems. And so, I asked in my normal self, because I'm not a stressful person. I don't get caught up in a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, I kind of nicely avoid drama. Very good. Whatever. I'm good at avoiding drama. So I'm asking her what's wrong, and she started telling me about a conversation that she had with her aunt. Now, her mother just passed not too long ago, back in March, and her aunt calls to say that she was going to come up and pick up some of her mother's stuff because she wanted it. And, she was really stressed out about this. And it was so interesting because as I listened to her and she's, going on and on about it, I started thinking about that chapter in A Course in Miracles. So let me read that to you, a little section of that, not even the chapter, but just a couple of verses out of there, so I can really talk about this. Now, it's interesting because a lot of times we see people that get into what we think is conflict over what, I don't know. I know that sometimes when I'm experiencing conflict, or I think that there is conflict present, I think about Ratanji. Ratanji is a guy who I adore. He has a whole business, a whole concept built around this idea of stress-free living. And he stays here in Ohio. I used to go out and watch his TV shows all the time. And Ratanji is always talking about this idea of oneness, that we are all one. His thing about stress-free living is saying that when we recognize only oneness, then we realize that there is nothing to be stressed out about because there is nothing else out there. The same as what A Course in Miracles would tell us. These ideas that we can somehow have conflict with our brothers is an attack upon ourselves, is basically what he's saying. And so let me read you this out of here, and then I'll go on and explain a little bit more about how Ratanji would classify this. Conflict must be between two forces. It cannot exist between one power and nothingness. I'm reading out of chapter 23. There is nothing you could attack that is not a part of you. And by attacking it, you make two illusions of yourself in conflict with each other. So let me just go ahead and read this because I want to interject here. And this occurs when you look at anything that God created with anything but love. Conflict is fearful, or it is the birth of fear. So now the way that Ratanji would more than likely explain this is it's like our left hand getting into an argument with our right hand. My dad used to call marijuana. He would see people smoking these marijuana things, and he didn't call it marijuana. He didn't call it weed. He didn't call it any of the traditional names. He called it a left-handed cigarette. So it was a cigarette that you held in your left hand. That's how you knew when he was talking about a drug. And a regular cigarette you hold in your right hand. So he would always talk about left-handed cigarettes. Ratanji would say, it's like your left hand getting into a fight with your right hand, saying, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. He's like, if you recognize that it's part of the same whole, then one hand can't argue with another hand because they are part of the same thing. You can't have an arm over here and an arm over here fighting against each other because they are part of one body. And so we need to look at everything and everybody as being part of this one body. You can't attack what you are a part of. So it's not like your left hand can all of a sudden go over here and attack your right hand or attack something else, that when it sees that it is a part of one entire whole. So this idea that they're saying that conflict must be between two forces, but there is nothing that you can attack that is not a part of you. So it is like you turning against yourself when you try to attack your brother. So I was thinking to myself, like, wow, and then when we see attack, when we perceive attack, it's the Course tells us it's because we first perceive that we're vulnerable. All attack is self attack. So why attack anything? So, my girlfriend is not necessarily going to understand that concept. She's breaking out in hives. She's going through all this drama. She's upset. And she's saying, wow, she's thinking that somebody is doing something to her. Her aunt is trying to come and take stuff that belonged to her mother, and she's upset about it. Now, it's so funny because, oh, I'm sorry. That's Lynn. It says, I see that so clearly now. I am always arguing with myself. There's nothing else out here. So yeah, it is this whole idea. I think last night when I was listening to Dr. Will Coleman on his class, somebody talked about that idea of a mirror neuron or a mirror neutron, some type of part of an atom that it mirrors itself. And so everything is just simply a mirror. And when we believe the reflection in the mirror is real, is when we try to attack it, but it's really only you seeing your own reflection. I mean, the Course, I know for so many of us, so many people don't understand that all attack is self-attack, that conflict must be between two forces. And when you are fighting against anything or anybody, it's because you first have to make them separate from you and then go out and attack them. But of course, we know that there is an issue when we do that, because what we're doing is oh, the Course deals with this so beautifully, because it talks about it, like how the moment we try to do that, it's like we have taken that slippery slope on into this place of hell, instead of going towards heaven. um, your enemy, oh gosh, there's so much in this chapter, so juicy to talk about. Do you not realize a war against yourself will be a war on God? Is victory really conceivable? So it's so funny, because as I was going through and I was like looking at that, the thing that I did on Sunday came back to me so clearly. This idea that we are attacking something. So my metaphor the other day for the experience that I had of God was, as a result of reading that quote from Joseph Campbell that says, a myth is a mask for God. Since a metaphor is what lies behind what is visible, what we see, since it is what's in back of that, the thing that we don't see, I was like sitting there and I was thinking to myself, like, how can I truly describe this? Now, give me 1 second, because I want to read this off of here. I don't want to get too far above or too far beyond. Okay, armed with this understanding, I also see that by choosing not to engage with myself, I bring peace to the world. Okay, so exactly. But now here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that's funny is that because you choose not to engage yourself with it, doesn't mean that other people get that same awareness. Now, it's funny, because what I'm saying is that, like if I change my mind, or if I choose not to go down there, if I choose not to dance, does that necessarily end the conflict or the struggle? And a lot of us are caught up in relationships that we just can't avoid somebody bringing to us drama. I mean, it is like we stay in a universe, or in situations. Sometimes we live in houses with people who always want to bring up issues that we are bound to deal with. So my girlfriend she's getting all upset about this with her aunt about something. And I sat there, and as I'm listening to her, it seems so very simple to me. I said to her, well, she doesn't even have a key. And my girlfriend says, she doesn't have a key. And I was like, no. I was like, you know, it's as if We give people entrance into our space, into our psyche, into our minds. We give them entrance into it, and we act as if, as if we don't have a choice, as if the dance is one that we are pulled along with like some kind of rag doll. And somebody just, sweeps us off and starts this dance, and they're dancing with us around the room when we don't have to agree to participate in the dance. I mean, so when we get caught up, when we take on the drama as if it's our own, it's as if we're agreeing to do the dance. We give people entrance. We give them a key. We answer the phone. We get caught up in the drama rather than realizing that we have the right to say, you know what? I'm not going there with you. And so it becomes this thing about, well, how is it that I uh, what was it in jujitsu? Is it the jujitsu? How is it that I use your own strength and your own force against you so that I sidestep it and so that I'm not caught up in it? You know, and I'm going to get to my other little thing in just a second. But when I think about that, I think about things that we fight up against that have absolutely no power. So you ever walk into some place and I do it all the time. I have spider webs in my basement in certain rooms because I don't go in there very much. And inevitably, I'll walk into this back room, and all these spider webs are just, it seems like I walk blindly into these spider webs. And then I start fighting the spider webs, and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, I'm fighting through these doggone spider webs, and they're all over the place. And it's just because I simply didn't see them. But then it seems like sometimes the more you fight, the deeper entangled you get in the mess. I mean, it's like, wow, rather than just taking a deep breath and stepping back and taking my little, because I have a little towel or a little stick, and I just kind of like hit the spider webs down, and then I can go in without problems. But the moment I try to fight and struggle up against them, it seems as though I get tangled up or I get caught up in something that is just, has no power to change anything. I know you saw Anaconda or whatever that movie was. Is it Anaconda or was it some other spider movie? Those things actually have no power to change anything. But the more you struggle up against it or fight up against it, the more real it seems. So the same thing with everything else that goes on in your life. You give it power by fighting with it. If it's quicksand, you give it power when you struggle up against it. And rather than you freeing yourself, you get further caught up in something that you don't want to be in. You ever seen a mouse on one of those sticky traps? Oh, it's a terrible thing. They created those things as if it's a more humane way to catch a mouse. But when it gets caught on that glue, the more it struggles up against the glue, the worse it gets caught and it gets stuck. And so it becomes this thing of like, you want to say, oh, please stop struggling, because it's just terrible. But that's a lot of times what we do in our lives. We fight up against things that actually have, very little power over us. We struggle against it, and by struggling against it, we give it more power. So I love that part in here where it started talking about how we give things power. There is strength in innocence when we see that our sons, everybody is sinless. When we start to look at the world with love, then what we see is love. It's not this enemies that we think are out there. I've met the enemy. The enemy is us. The moment we think we're fighting up against something else, we realize that we're only fighting up against ourselves. And so, in that, We need to stop the struggle. But now here's where the other thing came from. So I'm dealing with this thing as a mask for God, this whole little metaphor that I saw. And I dropped my glasses somewhere. They're way over there now. I have to pretend like I can see. So I'm at this, at this place where I'm dealing with this metaphor, a mask for God. And I saw, instead of a matador, a metaphor, I saw a matador. Remember the matadors that we see that go out there and they're bullfighters? So it was interesting to me because I thought to myself, every time we think we know what God is, every time we get this idea, this impression that we know what God is, since God is undefinable, unlocalizable, un, beyond our ability to know, as Ernest Holmes calls it, Ernest Holmes calls it the no thing. It is that thing out of which everything else was created. So when we talk about there being a body of God, we participate in being part of the body of God. Acts 17 and 28 says that it is in God that we live, move, and have our being. So we are part of the body of God. So is what you don't see. All of that is part of this thing called God. So when I started thinking about it, I started thinking about the moment that we try to pinpoint, the moment we try to focus in and say that this or that is God, we tried to contract it into a definition that it is beyond. So, um, so if we are part of it, if we are part of this whole, and the moment we start to fight and struggle up against it, we struggle up against ourselves, or we struggle up against our God, because there is nothing else. All is part of that wholeness that is God. So I thought about the matador and its cape. And you know how the matador holds this cape out there, for those of you who are listening and not watching me, and I guess some of you are watching me too. But the matador takes his cape and he holds it out there to the bull and he shakes it. He shakes it. And as the bull runs at that cape, he snatches it back. Ouch! Ouch! I just hit my hand. I'm sorry, hand. He snatches it back and realizes, revealing that he's just chasing after a cape and there's really nothing behind it. That's what we're doing all the time, though. We're chasing after what we think God is. And when we pull back the thing, we see that it's nothing back there, because it is not just that thing, it is all things. But we can sit there and we can pinpoint, we can point to, we can say that, God is love, but also God is hate, you know, but not in the sense that hate is real. Hate is not an entity. Hate is nothing. Hate is your fear. Hate is your ideas of inadequacy. But those are things that you created. They are not real. The Course says in the beginning, remember, nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of the God. The unreal is that fear. The unreal is that hate. That unreal is all those miscreations that you created, but they are not the truth. The truth is what is eternal. The truth is what God created. The truth is that you are a spiritual being. You are a spiritual being means that you are eternal. You are here forever. This shell that you exist in, this body that you exist in, is not. So the moment we try to point to what we think God is, this idea of God is the moment that veil is snatched back, and then we see, ah, not that either. But it is all things. And so the moment we are going around chasing after something, we're chasing, 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 trying to define it, trying to bottle it, trying to give it definition, trying to do all those things. Even our attempts as we put them in books and we talk about them and sing about them, all of those are inadequate to describe the allness that is God. Oh, I love this. And so the moment we think we've got it, it's kind of like trying to wrestle the air. It's like they used a wonderful, beautiful thing in here. Um, um, do-do-do-do. The Son of God at war with his Creator is a condition so ridiculous as nature roaring at the wind in anger, proclaiming it is a part of itself no more. Nature getting mad at the wind and saying, "Oh, you're not a part of me anymore." I mean, really, that's how it is. That's how simple it is. It is this idea that we have that there is something else out there. The moment we give up this idea of separation, the moment we give up this idea of the us and the them, that we're fighting up against something else, the moment we give up that idea, then we'll get to that place where Ratanji talks about this being part of one whole. You guys, I'm mentioning Ratanji. He is on Facebook if you're interested in friending him. He gives out his ideas every single day. He's always saying a thought for today, and Ratanji to spell Ratanjit, I think it is Ratanjit Sonde, Sonde. And I do believe that's how you say it, in case you want to friend him or follow him. He's also on Twitter, and he's got a website called Stress Free Living. But he talks about this us being all part of one body, and the moment we're attacking part of ourselves, which is impossible. If it is one, if all life is one, if God is one whole, if we are part of that whole, then this idea that we can attack anything is ludicrous. And so we need to give up that perception. The more you struggle and fight, the more you get tangled up. I said that already. It's so funny because I think sometimes we are like Sisyphus. You know, um, many of you know, um, mm, many of you know Sisyphus as the guy from Greek mythology who was constantly pushing this big boulder, this big rock up this mountain, up this hill, and he would push. And the moment he got up to the top and he's thinking, he's going to let this go like it's going to stay this time, the thing starts rolling down after him again. And it becomes this useless journey that he's bound to spend the rest of his life doing, rolling this rock, this boulder up a hill, and then the rock rolling right back down again. A lot of times we're doing those exact same things because we don't understand that we are sometimes our own worst enemies, and we're doing this to ourselves. I'm often tempted, and I often do ask people, at what point do we get tired of drama? Or at what point do we start to see that drama, that we not only do we create drama for ourselves, but we also create our own ailments and our own sickness by constantly trying to attack something else when we're really attacking ourselves. I love when Carolyn Myss, in one of her books, she talked about this idea that our biology our biography, I'm sorry, the story of our lives, our biography becomes our biology. So we think that we're having thoughts that are out there somewhere, but they are then taking residence in this temporary frame, this temporary form that we were taking on because they attach themselves to our physical bodies. These thought forms, they do. And so when we're busy with these ideas of of there being somebody else, of us doing something, that saying that people like to use, saying that anger and unforgiveness, the things that we haven't forgiven, is like taking poison in ourselves, in our own bodies, and expecting somebody else to die. Well, Carolyn Miss says that same thing about our bodies. She said that we make ourselves sick through how we think and what we do. So if that be the case, um, and Brian, I see you on here chatting with me. I don't mean to like ignore it. Um, Brian did correct me with Joseph Campbell. Thank you so much. Sierra Lawrence College is where Joseph Campbell taught. Um, a sister college with Cleveland Institute of Art. Bless your heart. Thank you for that. So we're busy, we're busy making ourselves sick with these thought systems. So a lot of times when we're out there thinking that we're attacking somebody else, we're really only attacking ourselves because there is nobody else out there. So if we're attacking ourselves, Carolyn Miss says, is that what the jailer doesn't recognize is that the moment he puts somebody else in prison, he also locks himself up in a cell too. Because there is a price to be paid for locking somebody else up in a prison. I mean, the price that's paid is your own freedom because you can't walk away if you've got somebody else in a jail, right? So it becomes the jail and the jailer. You can't harm somebody and not actually feel the repercussions of the thing that you've done to somebody else. It is part of one whole system. So if you want to stop attacking yourself, stop attacking other people. A friend of mine's Greg, and I don't know why I gave you his real name, but I did, so I'm going to let it be. But Greg was telling me about, I had said something to him about this whole thought system, these whole thought forms. And he has been not only a paramedic, but a nurse. He was a paramedic first. And now one of the things that they're doing is, well, I'm telling a whole lot of information down there. I'm just telling you this to say that he has seen a lot of people die. And so when I started talking about this idea that about all this stuff, as we're having a conversation about this stuff, he says, he says he's constantly amazed as he watches people make their transitions. He said it seems as though there are people who, when they die, it's almost like right before that moment of their death, he said they seem like they're in either excruciating pain or extreme terror. And he says, and then on the other hand, you'll see people that when they die, they experience this euphoric sense of peace, almost to the point where they're smiling when they die. And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, that goes hand in hand with everything that I've learned. This idea that we either have pleasure or we have pain according to what we mete out in our lifetime. So if we're constantly seeing the world is divided, if we're constantly going out there attacking, if we're constantly sending out negative vibration, negative energy, that's exactly what we're going to get back. The moment we change that up, and you guys, I am fond of telling people that everything exists in the moment. So there is a retroactive thing that happens in this universe, so that as I forgive in this moment things that have passed, I get to go back and retroactively make corrections. Because we stay in a holographic universe, all of this stuff is happening in the present moment. I get to affect the change right here and now that happened before. So if there's something that you haven't let go, if there's stuff that you need to let go of, if there's different ways of looking, that you have the power within your mind to start making, to make that correction in this now moment. And the secret too is when you make the correction in the now moment and it starts to act retroactively, as Jesus said, go forth and sin no more. Don't do it again. I mean, leave it back where it is. Leave it done. Let it be done. So often when we do things, we want to go out there, and rather than let it be what it is, we want to go out there and dig it up. Like we've buried something or we've put it to rest or whatever have you. We want to go dig it up and see how it is. See what happened to it. Did I really forgive this, or whatever the case may be? When we forgive stuff, when we let it go, let it go. Yesterday ended last night. I'm so fond of saying that. Yesterday ended last night. I'm not dragging that into today. I won't drag it into today. And so when we let stuff go, let it go, let it be done. I keep feeling like I need to do something else out of this course with you. Um, so here it is. Your enemy was God Himself. When you think that you're trying to attack something else, when you think you're trying to attack anything outside of you, you're really not, because there is nothing outside of you. You and God, you and your Father, all of this stuff is one. Your enemy was God Himself, to whom all conflict, triumph, and attack of anything are all unknown. He loves you perfectly, completely, and eternally. The Son of God at war with his Creator is a condition that is so ridiculous as nature roaring with the wind in anger, proclaiming it is part of itself no more. So let me skip, because I read that part already. The war against yourself was undertaken to teach the Son of God, that he is not himself and not his Father's Son. For this, the memory of his Father must be forgotten. Did I read that right? Did you understand me right? The war against yourself was undertaken to teach the Son of God that he is not himself. So you're trying to make real the split. You're trying to make real the split, and it's simply not real, and not his Father's Son. For this, the memory of his Father must be forgotten. So you must forget about God. You must forget about you being part of God in order for you to make it real that there is a split between you and your brother, or between you and your God. And it's just not so. So you know what? I keep thinking to myself as I as I talk about this stuff, I keep thinking, I'm not here. I tell people this all the time. I'm not here trying to change you. I don't want you to, like, all of a sudden say, you know what, I want to think like Sandra thinks. That's not the goal of the teaching. The goal of the teaching is that you not only know yourself, get a clear picture of who you are, but that you find peace, you know, that you get to a point of peace within yourself. When you're going around chasing after these shadows that you believe to be other people, um, it's like this useless fight. It's like expending useless energy when there is nothing else out there. So, so it becomes this thing of me wanting you to stop spinning your wheels, trying to fight up against something that has no power in your life, because they are shadows. They are shadows that have no real effect. The only thing that is real is that you are a spiritual being. And so if that's all that's real, then this spirit that is your spirit is just this, this idea that there are other people and other bodies out there are differentiations on the same energy, the same spirit that you are made of. It's it's this differentiation of energy that helps you to see yourself more clearly. So it's not outside of you, it's all within you. It is all part of you. You are one with it, not within you in the sense as within a body, but you are in God. God, so it is this part of you that is like seeing a reflection of what you are. I don't know how to explain it any more clearly than that. And that may not seem clear to you, but at some point you'll see that there is really nothing else outside of you. So, wow, you know what? This is so wonderful. So when you start to see that this is like, that there's nothing else out there, and you start to see you're part of this one whole, and that what you're doing is that all attack is self-attack, then you'll stop doing like Sisyphus was doing, and pushing that idea of attack up the hill and continuously attacking it. So the other thing is that if if a metaphor, or if myth, or if all of this is a mask for God, I love it when somebody told me, this awareness that we can't see our own face, nor can we see the face of God. The reason why you can't see your own face except by reflection is because that's the same experience that you have with God. And was God not created? Were you not created in God's own image? I mean, we were created in God's own image. God is the no thing that we cannot see, that is all things, just like you are the no thing that is all things. I mean, you are part of this one whole. Um, I have been sitting here and I have been watching my glass of water, and I had when I set it in here, I had ice in here, and the glass was full of ice, and now it's just this frosty glass of ice and water. Mm, mm, excuse me. So, in that same awareness, I talk about the drops of H2O, drops of water that think that it is something. But remember those solid things in there, the ice that was in there. Those pieces of ice thinks that it's Sandra and Brian and Dove and Lynn and all this thing. They think that they have an identity onto themselves because it's a solid form, this ice, and it thinks it's somehow different than the overall thing that is water. And still the water thinks that it's something different from the container that it's in. But all of it is God. All of it is God. There is nothing to fight. There is nothing to struggle against because it's all part of the same whole. When Jesus said, I and my Father are one, he wasn't trying to say that he and his Father are one and you're not one. He's saying that you and I are one. And he kept saying in the course, he was like, awe is the wrong thing to feel when you are in the presence of equals. And Jesus said that he is equal with you. All these things I do, you can do also. And this is for those of you who are watching who are old school, because if you're a course student, you know all this already. If you're a metaphysics student, you know this already. But if you're in a traditional religion, this may be like, just total blasphemy to you. But Jesus said, I and my Father are one. And he also said that all these things I do, you can do also, in greater things than these. And he said, you were born as gods, but you shall die as men because you know not what you are capable of. And so the moment we start to understand our divinity, our divineness, how we fit into the Holy Trinity, how the sonship wouldn't be complete without you and I, how this idea that there is a you and I is erroneous because we're all one. As the moment I start to treat you differently than myself or see you as something else, then I've somehow erred in my thinking. So the holy encounter is that I recognize that you and I are this one, and as I treat you, I shall treat myself. As I see you, I shall see myself. Never forget this, because in you I shall find myself or lose myself, is also true. I mean, it's all so wonderful and all so true, but there are so many greater things for you to get the awareness of. So as we let these ideas of our separation dissolve, as we let them go, as we start to see more clearly that our that our interests are one, that our paths are one, we'll give up this fight. When I told my girlfriend, I was like, your aunt doesn't have a key, so why are you stressing over this? I mean, why lose sleep over this? Why get all caught up and wrapped up in this? And a lot of times we get caught up and wrapped up in stuff only because it's like this, it's like we enjoy, the fight, the struggle against what we fear. I mean, and who would continue to do that if they knew the truth? I mean, we make things real by fighting up against it. But the moment you recognize that it has no power to influence you or impact your peace, then you get to a point of rest. You get to breathe more deeply and say, wow, I don't have to do this. So let me end with by reading some of this. Do you not see the opposite of frailty and weakness is sinlessness? Innocence is strength, and nothing else is strong. Innocence is strength, and nothing else is wrong. Let me give you an image of that. If innocence is strength, innocence does not see you as an enemy. So innocence doesn't pick up a sword. If you pick up a sword, right, it's saying that you believe that what is before you can attack. You have now taken a lesser role. You have now made yourself weak by trying to attack what cannot be attacked. Do you understand? So it becomes this thing of somebody has to lay their weapon down. Somebody has to be the first to perceive peace. Somebody has to be the person who says, I see your innocence. And therefore, I lay down my sword. I don't even pick it up. The person yielding the sword is not the person of strength, but the person of strength is the one who is innocent, who knows that they cannot be assaulted, who knows that they cannot be hurt, who knows themselves to be eternal, who knows themselves to be part of God, who knows themselves to be a part of you. That's strength, not the attack thoughts, not the sword wielding thoughts. The strength is love. Innocence is strength, and nothing else is strong. The sinless cannot fear, for sin of any kind is weakness. And what is sin? To sin means that you simply miss the mark. Sin is not, uh, sin is simply something that happened, and it happens in an instant, and the moment it's done is done, is over with. It has no business being in this moment because that happened 5 seconds ago. It is let go as easily as that. You are not bound to it in any way, unless you keep going to dig it up and trying to drag it with you into the future. let go of it, and keep moving forward. Um, the show of strength, attack, would use to cover frailty conceals it not. For how can the unreal be hidden? No one is strong who has an enemy, and no one can attack unless he thinks he has. It's funny, people always ask me about this thing, like who are your enemies? I don't have any enemies. I don't have any enemies. Well, who doesn't like you? I don't have anybody that doesn't like me. As a matter of fact, if you don't like me, it's because you don't know me. And if you knew me, you would love me. And even if you didn't know me, you should still love me because I love you. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a wonderful space to be in? So stop perceiving enemies in the world, stop perceiving attack in the world, and you'll stop experiencing it. You know what? Yeah, you will. You're sitting up there thinking to yourself, no, I won't. Yes, you will. All right, so it's time for me to turn over the mic. It's time for me to let go. I am looking to see. I love you too. You guys are so wonderful. So I don't see Barrett in the room, do I? But I'm still going to let the mic go in just a second. So here it is. Let me say this to you. SandraSutter.com is my website. You can follow me on Twitter at San Bishop, SanBishop. Sandra Said It. Who said it? Sandra Said It is the website. And you can friend me on Facebook, Sandra D. Bishop, or you can like my fan page at Facebook.com/ Sandra Thrives. Okay, remember, I love you. God loves you most of all. You guys, I'm turning over to Mike. Thank you so much. I'll see you later. Oh, bye, y'all. Okay, so and Brian, I know you're watching on here, so hi. Thank you for watching. And here we go. I'm letting it go.